All right, number 14 from the quiz is the sum of the geometric series. Going to be a finite series because we have 16 terms starting at 1 going to 16, right? So sometimes I like to make a little sense of this and like think of it listed like a series where it's just a bunch of things added together. So basically we have this, right? One first term, second term, out to the 16th term, right? And we can find some of these values pretty easily by saying the first term is just going to happen when x is 1. So if we plug in 1 to this little formula, we would have 2 times 1/3 to the 0 power, 1 minus 1. So anything to 0 power is actually 1. So we'd have 2 times 1. So our first term is just 2. All right, and then to do the second term, we'd make x2. So we'd have 2 times 1/3 to the 2 minus 1 power. So 2 times a third is just 2/3. Okay, so you can kind of see that this pattern actually is start with 2 and multiply by 1/3. Each time the exponent increases by 1, we have 1 more times third, right? And so the 16th term is actually going to be pretty small. If we made this 16 here, we would have 2 times 1/3 to the 16th, okay? And that's going to be pretty close to 0, actually. We type that into our calculator. We can do that quick. 2 times 1/3. Okay, and so this is your calculator's way of doing scientific notation. So this is just like 4.6 times 10 to the negative 8th, which means you would move this decimal place over 8 times. So it's basically 0. So it's just a kind of a tiny number. So this is actually going to be 0, right? So we have to add all these up, right? So we can even kind of get a guess here that I'm going to guess it's going to be right around 3 is going to be the sum of this because these terms get smaller pretty fast. This next one would be, I think, 2/9, so it's getting pretty small pretty fast. All right, so as far as finding the actual sum, I'm going to go back to our formula sheet. We have a geometric series, and we're trying to find the sum, so we're going to use this formula, where a1 is the first value, r is the rate, which is 1/3, and n is how many terms we have. All right, so I think we have everything we need. We have 16 terms. The first term is 2. And we have 1 minus the rate, which is 1/3. So I do want to do that in parentheses. 1/3, when I enter it in my calculator, 1/3 to the n power, which is 16. There's 16 terms. And divide that all by 1 minus the rate, which is 1/3. All right, and so the way I actually enter this on my calculator is I want to do all the numerator first and then divide that by the denominator. So the denominator is hopefully not too bad. 1 minus 1/3 means we'd have 2/3. If you have one whole and take away a third, you have 2/3. And then the top, I'm just going to enter in my calculator all at once, making sure I have parentheses the way it's shown here. And sorry, that's a little 16. That's hard to see. So here we go. I'm going to do 2 and then parentheses 1 minus another parenthesis 1 divided by 3, okay, to the 16th power, right, which is basically 0. We kind of talked about that earlier, that's just basically going to be 0. So we enter that in. So this should be about 2, because this is 1 minus 0 times 2. Okay, so I'm more or less going to call that 2. I guess I can leave it in the calculator there, but basically that's going to be 2. So I have to do 2 divided by 2/3. All right, so I'm going to go back in the calculator and just take that answer. So I'm going to divide that by 2/3, but make sure I put 2/3 in parentheses. So 2 divided by 3. Okay, and then just hit enter, and so we get about 3 by the look of it. All right, so I'm just going to round this and say this is about 3. Sorry, my thing kind of failed there. I don't know what's going on, but that should be a 3, not a -3, just a regular 3. Okay, that's a pretty tricky question, but hopefully that helps. This part I didn't necessarily need to do all of that, I just needed the first term in R to figure this out, but sometimes I like to do that just to make some sense of the question. All right, hope that helps.